Welcome to Godlab Teevee. Here's our host, Brother Doc.
Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, or whatever time you listen to it. This is Brother Doc of the Godlab. And if you're listening to it, you're listening to the podcast known as the Godlab with Brother Doc. And if you're watching Godlab Teevee. And today I have a phenomenal guest. Her name is Jade Charon. She is a choreographer. She is about to set the Cannes Film Festival on fire. And she also had a TED Talk, which was very monumental and powerful, known as Dance is My Ministry. I encourage each and every one of you to check it out. And without further ado, I want to say, welcome, Jade, to the God Lab. How are you, Jade?
I'm good. Thanks for having me. How are you?
I'm good. Thanks for agreeing to be on.
Yes.
So, Jade, let's get into it. I usually like to find out from my guests because people are usually inspired by what they hear. Can you just give us a little background of who you are, where you're from, just a little bio, if you don't mind?
Yes. So I am originally from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, born and raised.
Okay.
I started dancing before I could walk. My mom said the only way she can keep me still was to put on Janet Jackson's Rhythm Nation. And she said she'll put the tape in and I just move around. So she knew I was a dancer. Gotcha. So I started dancing at City Ballet Theater when I was 5. But my mom also had me dance in church in the praise dance ministry. And at the time, I hated it. I was like, no, it's boring. But that has been the single difference in my career, that I train both in, I don't want to say like secular world, but in studios, but also in ministry. So I went to High School of the Arts. I went to Columbia College for my undergraduate. And then I went to UCLA to get my MFA in dance. And then I got into filmmaking while I was a graduate student. And I've been making films and dancing ever since. And now I am an assistant professor at Medgar Evers College, where I teach dance and media technology.
Awesome. But I saw at Medgar Evers College. I said, "Oh, that's my alma mater." I love Medgar Evers College. I was one of the first people in the media department. We had a professor named Dr. Mary Umalu and Professor Daniels. And man, I miss those days being in the radio studio and just having a good time. So, Jade, you said dance is something that even goes back to when you were a child, right? What do you think about dance that is so, liberating? Take it, they say it's therapeutic, even people for the class. So in your journey or your dance, quote unquote, corny pun intended, what was it about? I know your mom got you into it, right? But as you developed, what made you stay in? Because you didn't have to stay in that medium, but why did you stay in that medium, if I may ask?
Right. So dance has always been a way for me to express myself. Sometimes people see me on social media and they think I'm this like outgoing person, but in real life, I'm not. And so I always found confidence in my movement. And it's always been, I always say too, like my worship, my relationship with God, connection. And so actually I love teaching dance. And when I teach dance to non-dancers, I have to tell everybody dance is for everybody. We move every day, we move our bodies. When we dancing in a backyard, barbecue, or the electric slide, the wobble, all of these things are a part of our culture and it's knowledge. And so teaching people how to tap into their body intelligence is important for me in the work, because dance is healing. Yeah, moving is healing. Mm-hmm.
Movement is healing. And we talk about our people, melanated, people of African descent. Dance has been a part of our journey, if you will, right? I think about going back to the continent of Africa and then bringing those dances here to the shores of North America and South America and the Caribbean, right? And I really appreciate you giving that history. Who has been some of your influences in the world of dance or choreography?
So of course, when I was younger, I thought I was going to be an Alvin Ailey. I think that's most young dancers aspire to be in that company, right? Because they were so legendary. And I always wanted to move to New York. I actually wrote a mission statement when I was in fifth grade, and my uncle, he framed it. He still has it. And I talked about I wanted to be on Broadway and move to New York. So it's funny that I'm here now. Some choreographers that I really like and inspire me. One is Camille Brown. She's actually from Queens. She had a a dance called Black Girl Linguistics, and I saw it when I was in graduate school at UCLA. And it just opened my mind to all the possibilities because, I people think dance is just for you think of little girls and tights, but it's really male dominated when you think about choreographers and who's behind the scene, right? And so to see her have her own tour, her own musicians, and sell out the Red Cat Theater in LA, I said, "Oh, it's possible. You can do this. You can also have your own company." So I would say she was an inspiration. Kyle Abraham, he was one of my professors at UCLA. David Rusev. Yeah, I'm like a nerd also. And so like I like studied a lot of artists and yeah, those are I think who have maybe inspired me on my journey. But I also take inspiration from like my mom, my family, culture growing up. And then me finding my own voice, because most times dancers dance with a company first and then they go out and choreograph, but that wasn't my path. I started choreographing right away. And so yeah, so I've been bits and pieces here and there. It's how I've been able to define my own journey for myself.
Oh, well, I appreciate you taking us through the steps of how you got there. Something you said, because I'm a fifth grade teacher in addition to podcaster. I am a teacher. I've been teaching for 20 years, 20 plus years, right? And I work with fifth grade students. So you said something about a mission statement. How important do you think it is for our listeners of any age to be in the Bible? It says, "Without vision, the people shall perish," right? So what led you to create that mission statement, and how do you think it has guided you along the path?
Right. So, commit your plans, right? I went to a non-traditional preparatory school, all the way up to eighth grade. It was called at the time Marva Collins Preparatory School. And Marva Collins was this revolutionary educator out of Chicago. And so my academic experience was a little different than a lot of my friends growing up. We didn't have recess at that school. We had to say a creed every day. We had to say affirmations, and our teacher had us write mission statements. And so that was something that was a part of my upbringing. I had a very rigorous academic experience. And I actually, as a professor, I now have my students write mission statements because a lot of students don't even really know what a mission statement is. And so I think it's just so vital to just have a vision and know where you want to end up. And so I implement the things I learned in my own upbringing into the classroom.
Wow. Well, now I'm like, man, that might be an assignment for one of my students. That's a good idea. All right. So I heard your journey with dance. I heard about how you set a mission at a young age, and you accomplishing, and you've already accomplished great things. I know you got more great things to accomplish. What kind of dance? Pardon my ignorance. I'm not a dance nerd, so I was like, I know about Gregory Hines and the Nicholas brothers, but and Savion Glover, of course, but and Debbie Allen, but then Alvin Ailey, but then it stops, right? So what kind of what is it? Modern dance? Is it African dance? Jazz? Or is it a little bit of both? What's
That's actually a very great question. So I appreciate that. So I trained in ballet, modern, jazz. I took African, I didn't really do the tap. I wish I would have learned tap more. That's like one of my regrets. But I did a little bit of tap, but my main thing were those things as a dancer growing up. But as a choreographer, the type of work I make, I would consider contemporary. It is like a gumbo, will you say, of just these different techniques that I learned growing up, and then I choreograph them in a way that communicates the message. But then it also goes to my upbringing in praise dance, because I don't know, everybody's church is different, but in our church, anybody could be a part of the ministry. So we had to learn how to accept all abilities and body types to still create that piece. So really, I just think just being a good architect with the body is something that it's more of my thing. But yeah, I learned all the different styles but I think I'm more contemporary as far as my movement aesthetic.
Gotcha. And I appreciate you breaking that down, because I was like, I know, I just don't know it. So thank you for giving the listeners that that point of view, if you will, in your history. All right, Jade. So I was impressed with your TED Talk, which is entitled, I encourage all you viewers out there or listeners, check it out. And it was entitled "Dance is My Ministry." Mm-hmm. And I was impressed. My wife and I watched it, and you were dealing with the social problems that we were, and we say we, the nation, the world, but I'm especially talking about Black people, for lack of better words, right? Dealing with the issues. Can you just, but then you also ended on a high note, right? It was like, yes, you dealt with the trauma, the drama, if you will, but then you also talked about ministry. Can you walk us through that, if you don't mind?
Mm-hmm. So in 2012, after the death of Trayvon Martin, I remember being really angry and sad, but not really knowing what to do. I wasn't really sure how my art could work as far as activism was concerned. Like, I knew people who were in the front lines, but I didn't really know. I knew prayer warriors, I knew church, but I didn't really know where I fit. I'm in New York, so I'm sorry about the the sirens. So that was that. And then fast forward to when Mike Brown in 2014, I believe. And then in 2015, I got accepted into UCLA, and I was moving to Los Angeles, but that was when Sandra Bland died. And so I just remember just already kind of lost about grad school anyway, because I thought I'm gonna be on tour, and I graduate my undergrad, so I ended up just in grad school. And I was like, well, I want to make work about Black lives and social justice issues, and because UCLA is a PWI, so a predominantly white institution, I didn't really want to translate things or just I want them to actually see what was going on.
Explain it. You just
exactly. And so they actually encouraged it. And so, and David Rousseau, one of my professors, he had an assignment for us to make a dance. And so at the same time, I have been working with Boys and Girls Clubs of America in Milwaukee, but then I transferred to Compton when I was in LA. So I was living on UCLA campus, which was very a upscale white neighborhood, but I was like going to Watts and Compton, so I was just seeing two different worlds. And I remember seeing the dancers, my students, the only way I could get them to like listen was to let them crump and battle dance on Fridays. Like, they loved it, so that was like my little thing. And when I would see them doing these movements, I'm like, wow, like I've seen this in Africa, studying African dance, and most of these kids were in Watts and Compton, and they were so spiritually in tune. So then I made a film that featured the students in Compton and Watts, called "I Love Myself" or Reverse, and it took some of my dancers from UCLA and some of the dancers from the Boys and Girls Club, and we did a film in Watts and Compton. And then I danced on top of that so that my professor and everyone could see who I was working with, why this subject matter was so important. It humanized the subject in a way and used movement. But that film went viral. So then the New York Times saw the film. Because again, I'm not knowing what's going on. I put it on Facebook and someone from the New York Times saw it and they came all the way to LA to interview us about it. So that's when I was like, oh, film could, film gets you around a little quicker. Yeah. So that started my journey with that. And so when I was asked to do the TED Talk, I showed that my first film. They're like, we want you to dance, show your film, and talk in 9 minutes. So I'm like, oh. So then that's when I guess I first start understanding the power of technology and dance, right? And speaking, but using the tools that I had in church. So I grew up in ministry. My mom still works for ministry. My whole family is in ministry. And so I'm not necessarily back home in the church, but I'm using some of those same tools in dance and on the outside of the church walls. And so I just told the truth about being at UCLA, working here, these two worlds, and this is how I'm dealing with it at the same time.
Yeah, it was powerful, and it made me think of, because I said, ministry a lot, because I'm a pastor, and a lot of times we think, as you say, the four walls or tradition, like you do this, you do that, but even dance in some churches are like, well, we don't do dance. But I'm like, King David danced before the Lord. I mean, dance is not. I mean, ministry or worship is not just limited to one thing. But I also appreciate how dance is your ministry, right? But you really went beyond those four walls. You really incorporated the least of these, so to speak, coming from places like Watts or Compton, right? And then you put it all together in this powerful, evocative piece that invoke some thoughts for me. I mean, I'm an old hip hop head, and I remember Public Enemy. They had Bring the Noise, right? And then I put in with the Bible, make a joyful noise, right? And sometimes it's not always joyful, right? you gotta tell them when they walk around the walls of Jericho wasn't exactly singing praise, but they shouted out into the Lord and the walls came tumbling down, which brings back to dealing with the issue of systemic racism and structural practices that have been used to oppress and hold people down, right? So dance is liberating. But now at this medium with film. And I saw this piece. I'm not saying, I don't know if you saw this or not, but it reminded me of Rosie Perez opening dance for the film by Spike Lee, Do the Right Thing, 1989's Do the Right Thing, right? Were you inspired by that by any chance?
I was just you in the spirit. I was just gonna say, so Fight the Power, when she does that solo, Do the Right Thing is so powerful. But that was one of the, and I'm gonna claim it. I'm gonna meet Spike one day. I hope to see him in Brooklyn. But that changed my life too, right? Just seeing that powerful solo to open up the piece. I actually learned some of that we had an assignment in grad school to cite choreography that we really like and learn it, not to mimic it, but to find inspiration from it. So yeah, that's definitely one of the things that inspired me, and just how Spike was able to bring in his own voice and aesthetic and really appreciate the different art mediums, that they don't have to just live in these separate worlds, but find really interesting ways to combine them.
Right. Yeah. That's what made me, and no offense to Rosie, because it was dope. Can I take that? But yours, even though it had the anger, it was hopeful. And I don't know, bringing in the ministry, the church, I like to think it was a piece. But yeah, you definitely were angry, as we should be. There's righteous indignation, but then it also ended on a hopeful note, which leads me to this question. So you, from what I understand, this is a big deal. You have a film that was in the Cannes Film Festival.
Yeah, so Cannes World Film Festival, yes. And it actually won Best Featurist Filmmaker. I actually feature students from Medgar Evers College in the film, right? So this is a part of a series of films that I've been working on, a project called Gold. And so it featured the students of Medgar Evers College. I worked with Kurt and Erica from NYU on the virtual reality space. I worked with Naja Mentor on cinematography and editing. And then I worked with Charles, Mr. Migaso on production. And he really helped inspire this film because most of my films before this didn't have words. They were all just movement based because I really wanted to learn how to tell stories through movement first. And then he was like, well, you should just try the text and the dialogue. So I think that really has made the difference because it opens it up to more people. Because I was scared. I'm like, oh, talking, but it's cool. So it's great. So yes, it got in. And yeah, I'm excited about it. We're waiting to see what other film festivals to get in. And to explain the film a little bit, so Gold it's about Black girls who receive superhero powers through their gold hoop earrings. And so when they put the gold hoop earrings, they end up in a new world. And they have these, what I call intercessors, right, that help take them to a higher consciousness, a higher power. And yeah.
Wow. Shout out to those. Charles is aka Migaso, my cousin, and Jade boyfriend as well.
Mm-hmm.
He's a dope. He was on the show last year, matter of fact, and we hope to have him back. So that's really cool. So I mean, not to sound cliche, but it's like, I mean, we got. I'm happy. It sounds so cliche. This term, black girl magic, right? But it's really nice to see the sisters really coming into a prominence, right? Where it's not just relegated to certain roles, right? Or domestics or other roles that are not positive. I don't want to say it, but everybody knows what I'm referring to, right? But to see them in STEM, like we had, I think about the Black Panther film, Shuri as being the most intelligent person in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and then the other young lady, Iron, I think it was Iron Girl, Riri, I can't remember what was Ironheart. Riri, these different characters. So you came up with a superhero project. I'm a comic book geek. How did you come up with a superhero project? Like, I'm kind of intrigued.
No, so I always tell this story. So this was in August 2020, pandemic. I am in quarantine in my mom's house, and it's like, I'm in Milwaukee. I think the world is over. You know, everybody else is like, oh, I love being at home. This is like earlier in the pandemic, right? And I'm like, no. So I was just having moments. And then Breonna Taylor's death happened. And I just remember being really fed up between that and then George Floyd later. And I never was even into comics or anything like that. But God just gave me this vision. It was like, you know, what if you created like this superhero that lives in the end, right? That thing of hope that you were talking about earlier, right? I really try to hold on to that, like a little bit of hope, but not in a way that's like cheesy, you know, but just a really grounded, rooted type of joy and hope. And so I thought about it, and then I thought, well, Superman goes to the telephone booth, like how would the girl get her power, right? Because I wanted to be accessible. I wanted to be something that my students could do and get in the mirror. And I'm like, oh, go hoop earrings. Like everybody, bamboo, like your hoops was a big deal, at least for me. And I wore uniforms growing up. So like my earrings was the way that like I could have some expression.
Yeah.
So then I was like, okay, to go hoop earrings. And then we also use like Afro picks as a weapon. So it was like, I don't want to call it, people call it futurism, Afrofuturism, and I think it definitely falls in line with it, but I don't like doing the titles because I'm like, I don't want to, disappoint. But yeah, so that idea of reimagining what a role would look like if I became a superhero. So I played it. We shot it in 2020. And it blew up. I ended up writing a children's book from it. And so now this film is the second film in the series, and then I have another film to shoot. But I want to eventually have a series. So
yeah,
the atmosphere.
yeah, I got speaking into existence. That's awesome. So how can we see it? Because I was trying to ask Mika. I was like, "Hey, she got a link?" And he said, "Well, I'm gonna check." I was like, "Man, I want to see it." But
yeah, I give it to you. The first film is definitely on Vimeo that people can purchase to see. The second one, Ghost Fear, is not on Vimeo right now, only because it's still getting, I'm putting it in festivals. But I can send it to you for sure. But yeah, so you can go on Vimeo, on my website. You can find a way to purchase and see the first film.
sure, Jay, can you tell? And I'm gonna put it. I mean, right now we're just filming it, but in post production, you viewers, you will be seeing this. What's your website or where people can follow?
Yeah. So my website is Jade, Jade Charon.com. And then I'm on Instagram, Jade_Charon.
Nice. Jade, I know you're a busy woman, but I just gotta ask this last question. What is one parting piece of advice you could give to our listeners?
So my parting words will be to protect your imagination, never stop dreaming. And I also tell my students this all the time. You don't have to stay where people met you at. Sometimes we think because if someone meets me as a dancer or as a teacher, that's all of who I could be. But if I want to be a businesswoman, an entrepreneur, if I want to do films, if I want to dance, I would encourage people to keep developing yourself, and it's okay for you to do more than one thing, and you don't have to just reduce yourself to whatever people know you as, but to just keep exploring. It's okay to keep learning new things and keep expanding yourself.
Ladies and gentlemen, we really had a good time conversing with you, Jade. It was a pleasure. I look forward to seeing more great works, and please put me in your films, please, okay? I can act. No, I'm just playing, but I can't. No, seriously. But I wish you blessings, and thank you so much for being on the Godlab this week.
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on. Right. KINGDOC. Yo, I'm dropping lines so cold, call it Arctic Breeze. Step into me, son, you're just a tease. Old school flow, I'm a lyrical chief. With the mics apart, bring a true belief. Back to basics, yo, you can't replace this. Ain't no auto-tune here, no gimmicks, just real rhymes, dog, that I'm kicking in your ear. I'm the wordsmith, the master of the craft. While you stumble in the dark, I'm the one who's gonna last, everlast, like a battery. Your styles will never last, you don't want to battle me. I got the Hunger Games, I got the hunger pains. You'll make you wonder, man, hot like summer, man. Big Daddy Docky, you know I'm back. The basic, basic, Big Daddy Doc, from the attic to the basement. And y'all know how I do it.
My name is Foxy Roxy. If you enjoyed today's program, like, subscribe, and share. Join the Godlab Nation. See you next week. God bless. Remember, give God the best of your life for the rest of your life.